going through some of our foundational documents to help prepare you guys for the assessment. Don't forget that there are 9 documents that you'll have to reference. We're going to go with number 1 today. We're going to start with Declaration of Independence. You do have to know all 9. My best piece of advice would kind of be have a graphic organizer in front of you that lists some of their key themes, which hopefully you can start making after getting through some of the videos that I'm going to be making. So without further ado, let's get on with the Declaration of Independence. So first and foremost, this is a major cause of the Revolutionary War. All of the colonist frustrations are kind of coming to a head based on taxation, based on their lack of representation in Parliament, and what they feel as disrespectful acts from the king. It is written largely by Thomas Jefferson, and you will see Enlightenment thinkers like Rousseau, like Hobbes, like Locke, like Montesquieu, not only with their fingerprints all over this document, but all over the Constitution. The big one that we're going to be hitting today is John Locke, and that's because of his principles: natural rights, life, liberty, and property, consent of the governed, and social contract theory. Essentially, the Declaration of Independence is a breakup letter between the colonies and Great Britain. It's generally broken down into 3 parts, starting with a general list of natural rights and Jefferson and the colonists' ideas of why they have a right to do this. Then it goes on to list the grievances against the king, which is actually a very important part of the document. And it ends with a Declaration of Independence from England. And this is followed by the Revolutionary War, in which we win and declare our independence formally from Great Britain. So John Locke's fingerprints. Number 1, he lists life, liberty, and property, which is important. It's different than what Jefferson's going to list, but it is important. He lists social contract theory, the idea that people are in a contract amongst each other in society, and usually that requires them to give up some rights. They have some obligations in order to create that community. And lastly, consent of the governed. That a government does not exist independent of the people. The people are the true ultimate authority when it comes to their government. So without further ado, let's get into some of our Declaration of Independence. First line is super important. It's bolded there on the screen: the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. The reason why I think this line is so important is because even in their declaration, they are declaring themselves 13 entities. The idea of this centralized government, we aren't there yet. Don't forget that the government that's going to take place after we declare our independence is the Articles of Confederation, loose central authority. So by identifying the 13 United States, they're identifying themselves as separate. First line there: necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. Jefferson is giving his reasoning for the Americans, the colonists, breaking off from the British. Then you have the classic line: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You see John Locke's fingerprints all over this line. The idea that they are inalienable, that they cannot be taken away, that they are natural rights. And he does substitute property for happiness because it's more poetic. That government derives their powers from the consent of the governed. That's another Locke idea. And I do think it's important that if you move down and you look at that last line, it is important in that Jefferson is hinting to the point, or to the idea, that they are not throwing off the British, without giving it consideration. That government should not be changed for light and transient causes, that it requires a great deal of stress for a government to be changed. And the reason why I think that's important is just fast forwarding to the amendment process that's in the Articles versus the amendment process that's in the Constitution, which we'll touch on in a future video. All right, let's do some list of grievances here. Red box. The king is making laws without any consent from the colonists or Parliament. He is the sole lawmaker in the government, and that isn't how a constitutional system is supposed to be. That's not even really how the British system is supposed to work. So He's not enforcing any laws. That's a big red flag. Next one, green box. The judges are wholly dependent on the king. That is not a system that's going to work because they're just now reflecting what the king wants. And again, ultimate authority rests with him. They're going to have a big problem with that. Yellow box. This is where you're getting a lot of your amendments, the freedoms that we have written into our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Quartering soldiers, the last one. That shows up as the Third Amendment. Doesn't seem like a huge deal today, but in the 1700s, that was a big problem. Having soldiers in your home was a constant reminder that you weren't in charge. So that's going to be a big push by these colonists. And you see some fingerprints of the future Bill of Rights all over this section. If they're listing the grievances, they're listing all the problems that the king has, or that they have with the king. They're basically pointing out what they think is wrong, what they don't think should be allowed. And it's important that you see these problems, because the solutions they're going to offer will be guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. If you look down at the last box, the blue box, depriving us trial by jury. Why do we have trial by jury in our Bill of Rights? Because it's the right thing to do. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried. You're no longer being tried by a jury of your peers in your community. You're being tried by someone 3,000 miles away. These are things that we build into our judicial system here because we recognize that they're fair, and that they prevent the government from using criminal justice, using laws to hold people down. How could I see this being used, the Declaration of Independence? I think it's a limiting document, but as far as you pulling it in from the outside, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can use it. For instance, the relationship between people and their government. If you get a question that asks about citizens and their relationship with the government, whether that be federal or state, the core idea of the Declaration of Independence is social contract theory and consent of the governed. So that relationship between the people, that the government is a reflection of what the people want. That's a way you could use this document. Another way, natural rights and equal rights. All men are created equal. We know, given the time period in which the document was created, that wasn't the true intent, that all men are created equal. But there's a degree of revisionism in that you can use that in connection with letter from a Birmingham jail and other foundational documents like that to make the argument that equal rights was a goal of the founders. Natural rights, life, liberty, in pursuit of happiness. And lastly, the list of grievances against tyrannical governments, that idea that they were basically writing the playbook of how to not be a tyrannical government by pointing out all the things the king had done. And I challenge you to kind of think of any other ways you can use the document, and best of luck.